Healthy Gamer is spearheaded by Alok Kanagia, aka Dr. K, who is a psychiatrist with an atypical advantage within the field, training as a monk in multiple different countries in Asia, who applies Eastern models of the body and mind into a Western practice in the medical field. This book was made from a lens of someone who I actually feel was similar to me. I began to fail out of high school in my junior and senior year of high school because video games sucked up most of my attention, and because I ended up developing problems in academia, it would stress me out, which I ran to the video games to cope with, worsening the problem by using games as copium. Dr. K had a similar experience before he became a monk. He joined Harvard Medical School with the goal of being recognized as a doctor from Harvard, who failed out because he used games also as a way to avoid him doing poorly in school. I feel myself and definitely others pulled to him because we've had the same experiences when it comes to games. They're alluring, so much more fun and engaging than real-life tasks can be. This is a problem that Dr. K has stepped into content creation to fix, to educate us on how our body, mind, and spirit all works in concert to achieve our goals. And if one of these systems runs into a problem that isn't addressed, it sends our whole system into whack. Cue us failing out of school, running to video games, running to substances. From going to a student who dropped out of college with a 2.5 GPA to becoming a Harvard medical professor, I feel that Dr. K has a lot to offer just from his personal experience, not to even acknowledge him as a professional in the medical field. I have watched a lot of Healthy Gamer over the years, and I'm sure Alok has played a big part in me furthering a personal spiritual practice for myself. I took notes while I read through How to Raise a Healthy Gamer, and I hope the information I took away and give to you inspires you to read the book if you feel you struggle regulating something in you or your child's life, or even learning how to communicate better with the people in your life. And thank you, Dr. K, for making us this book. It is something I wish I had earlier in my life, and I'm sure many people like me who are fans of yours feel the exact same way. Yet, I'm so grateful to have this piece of work in my hands now. So hi, my name is Cujo. So last week I finished reading How to Raise a Healthy Gamer by Alok Kanagia, and I hope I say his name right. I always refer to him as Dr. K. I guess that's how everybody refers to him, but this video is just going to be me talking about the notes that I took from this book and giving you the basic information I think that I took away. This book actually ends up encouraging like really healthy communication in general. Like you could read it and then learn a lot just on how communication works and how to open up conflict with each other. And I'm just going to kind of work down my notes and give you the information that I took away and explain it, hopefully in a way that makes it very accessible. The book itself is very accessible. Just whatever I say, hopefully it encourages you to get the book or at least check it out or learn about the ideas that are presented. So at the beginning of the book, Alok kind of outlines this program that can take around 2 to 3 months to establish and then 6 to 12 months to execute. Helps you set up a healthy relationship with your child and then healthy coping mechanisms instead of just running to games all the time. And there are 4 parts to this book. Part 1 is to understand, part 2 is to talk, part 3 is to act, and then part 4 is the common challenges that you run into. So this is part 1, understanding. Alok makes an argument from a neuroscientific perspective on why gaming is so addictive. When you're playing a game, it doesn't promote frontal lobe growth from a neuroscientific perspective, so you don't have to exhibit as much conscious behavior when playing a game. There's a dopaminergic part of playing a game, so it relaxes your body, doesn't make you as jittery, and of course when you have a dopamine hit, it ends up reinforcing your behavior, so you're more pulled to play the game again. Gaming also dampens your amygdala response, so you don't feel negative emotion nearly as much when you're playing a game, so it's a good way to cope. And the frontal lobe not developing that I talked about earlier, it atrophies kind of like a muscle because you don't have to use impulse control when you're playing a game. The game gives you the task and then your impulse is to complete the task. So the frontal lobe ends up atrophying over time. And gaming also dampens the hippocampus, which works in tandem with the amygdala to learn from experiences. So when the amygdala is dampened, then also the hippocampus is dampened, and you don't learn from mistakes that you made in the past. So all that, and if you tie it with the community that gaming provides, it's like a breeding ground to create an addicted person to a game or addicted child to a game. And Alok is coming from a parental perspective, and that's where the lens of the book is coming from. So he states that the world is entirely different than what that generation grew up in. So the way that we get our kids to have a healthy relationship with technology is if we model that behavior and we exhibit healthy behavior with technology in ourselves. So this is part 2 on talk. and how to talk with your child. So instead of coming from a lens of actually being combative and against your child, you want to use open-ended questions and seek to understand why your child is addicted to the game or really likes about the game. You can lead them to their own conclusions on what gaming means to them rather than you shoving your own perspective down their throat. And also, if you have a man child who's addicted to gaming and doesn't want to take responsibility, that most of the time that this is due to not letting them fail in life, or like letting them fail in endeavors outside of like the home or gaming. So if you let a man child or just someone who's grown who is not taking responsibility fail in their own endeavors, it will actually teach them to take responsibility. And a lot of this part talks about having openness and open communication, a perspective where you're on the same side of your child rather than being against them and trying to seek to understand their behavior without implementing your judgment onto them. You can even participate in the gaming to have more understanding of why the child likes gaming so much. It will build trust, and then it will model healthy behavior and using a gaming as a healthy addition to your life rather than having it be the crux or what you centralize your life around. So your main tools when it comes to communicating is going to be open-ended questioning, which means that there's no yes or no answer to it. You have to let them answer in their own way. Reflective listening, which is to take what the person had said to you and to simplify it into 1 or 2 sentences and then repeat it back to them to make sure that you understand them correctly. And while you're implementing these 2 things, you can use confusion to your advantage. If you're confused about something, you can just dump it onto their lap and say that I am confused about this, and can you help me understand why you think this way, because I am confused right now. If you use the confusion, it'll point out illogical thinking that doesn't make sense. And at the end of this section, he talks about laying the foundation for boundaries, which the integral part of laying a foundation for a boundary is to actually model a behavior and structure for your child to essentially kind of go along with your routine. Like, you yourself have to have a healthy routine in order for your child to also have a healthy routine. If you can separate work and play areas for yourself and for your child, that'll help cultivate and create more focus. And just getting regular outdoor exposure is extremely beneficial and very positive habit to have in your life. That being said, I wanted to film this outside due to his touch the grass movement that he's had, but it is like extremely windy, and the other day that I had to film this, it was like super loud outside. So we're in the dungeon. So then once you cultivate all this, we go to part 3, which is to act. And here are some of the components for a good boundary plan. You want small, very small, actionable, agreed enforcement, mutual agreement on an enforcement for a failed behavior. And this is very important that Alok talks about. If you fail to enforce on the small, actionable enforcements, then it teaches your child to actually ignore when you're trying to enforce. So you want to lay down the law when you mutually agree on said law. And instead of doing a straight enforcement, like you have to put on your clothes or like you have to do your chores, you can give your child an illusion of choice, which is you give them an option to maybe like do the dishes or sweep the kitchen. And they're more likely to do it if you give them an option instead of saying you have to sweep or something like that. And to realistically only expect your child to be able to accomplish 25% of your desired result, which is important to recognize that it's not necessarily about the goal, but it's about developing initiation towards developing a healthy lifestyle and making the right choices instead of the wrong one, like booting up a video game over and over. Some things that you can cultivate when trying to help your child is to have weekly check-ins with how they're doing. You can give them rewards if they exhibit good behavior, but not rewards that encourage to game more. You want to give them rewards that are not related to the gaming, and give them negative consequences that they agree that they'll follow through with, and negative consequences if they fail to meet the established boundaries that you worked on with your child. And if you dropped a written plan on a piece of paper that both you and the child can see, there's going to be a way more likelihood of success. Inevitably, pushback is going to come when you run into situations with your child where they don't meet up to the criteria that they set with you. So when there is pushback, you should empathize with your child, but then you should dump in their lap your perspective and how you're feeling, and then let them make their own decision on what they want to do, because realistically, as a parent, you want the best for them, and you want to help them understand how to get to that point. So now you have your goals and expectations set and the habits that you're trying to cultivate. You have to give your child the opportunity to fail, though. You have to give them the autonomy to fail, because once you actually let them fail on their own accord, then it leads to a higher chance of there being a mutual understanding between the two of you, because they're like, oh, this is real life, like I can actually fail at stuff. And like mom and dad can't protect me forever. In this section, he also talks about some Eastern ideas, which I will translate into a Western lens. But the things that he talks about is the manas, the anamkara, and the buddhi, which the manas is the emotional mind, the anamkara is the ego, and the buddhi is the intellectual mind. So when the manas is activated, the anamkara skews the buddhi judgment to soothe the manas. So when we're emotionally activated, our judgment is not accurate, basically, to put it bluntly. So when our emotions are active, it skews our intellectual judgment, basically. The ego jumps in to do that. When this happens, the manas gets activated and the ego jumps in to protect it. You need to validate how they feel and understand how they feel, and at the same time hold your perspective and let the two perspectives coexist in an understanding manner. That's how you get around this. Even if the failure is due to something outside of the child's control, you still want to uphold the boundary, because then it'll teach them that they can use things outside of their control to actually help them get around said boundary. So they can always come to you with a good reason to get around said boundary that they established with you, if you don't always hold them accountable and things outside of them. Usually if there's resistance with the child, that you're bumping into something with them that they value, and if you seek to understand that resistance, then you'll actually underneath that find what they value. It just ends up being that one of the biggest boundary pitfalls that people have is they change what worked, and that when it starts working, they're like, oh, we can go back to what we were doing before. And it fails like every time. It goes back to failing when they don't just keep what was working beforehand. And then Alok talks about 4 different challenges that you can run into when trying to change your kids' gaming behavior. That is ADHD, autism, depression, and marijuana use. And I'm just going to work through those really quickly, give you just a basic general idea of what the conditions of what we mentioned are, and then the solution for them. But this is a very basic overarching explanation of them, and there's definitely, if you have a kid that's like any of these, there's a lot more intricacy with it, and you should either purchase this book or go see a therapist. Even the book mentions that quite a bit, is go see a therapist and take your kid to a therapist if they're struggling with any of these, and to even get diagnosed. Some characteristics of ADHD is hyperfocus, which is intense focus on one thing, or just a general drifting focus, and not really ever in between. There's intense emotional dysregulation, and they have tantrums quite a bit, and they have very low impulse control, so they give in to their impulses very easily, and so their whole day is kind of structured around them just being pulled around by their impulses. So gaming can actually lock in their focus and then numb the emotions that they're feeling that are super intense, and it atrophies that impulse control, so they have to worry about it even less. The solution for a person with ADHD is to give them planners and reminders and help them understand, for 1, that they have ADHD, and for 2, that you can live a normal life with a condition of ADHD. Next, we're going to talk about autism. Some characteristics of autism is there is a lack of empathy when communicating with people. People with autism also have extremely repetitive behavior, so they fall into ruts a lot quicker than most people, and they struggle really badly with social cues. He mentions in this part that MMOs are a huge pull for people that have autism, because MMOs are usually centralized around you. You end up doing the same thing over and over and over a lot of the time, and you don't have that social cue element. It's all text, and there's no ambiguity in having a social conversation in an MMO, so it just pulls people with autism into it. And the solution to help them understand their gaming habit is to give them more closed yes or no questions instead of the open-ended ones, and give them extremely tight boundaries for gaming. And next is depression and anxiety too. I don't know if I remember to mention anxiety, but he lumped depression and anxiety together. Some characteristics of depression is anhedonia, which is finding no pleasure in anything. There's a negative self-view and a low motivation to do anything. So the solution that he provides with this is just a very, very basic one, but it's open-ended understanding. You want to listen to what the child has to say with no judgment, and a reassurance once they fully vent everything out that they have holding up inside of them. And with anxiety, most of your mind is always focused on the future. So when you focus on the future, you end up procrastinating because it's like, oh man, I don't want to do that because it's going to be painful and hard, and then you put it off until the last second. And if you play a video game, you don't have to think about how you're procrastinating and putting off something in the future instead of just doing it now. You can just play a video game and not even have to worry about any of it. Apparently the same solution for depression works here. You want to have open-ended understanding, fully listen to them with no judgment, let them vent everything that they're stressed about, and then provide them solutions that you think that could work for them once they feel that they're understood. And the last, number 4 that I have is marijuana use. He says that marijuana and gaming kind of go hand in hand, in that like around 30% of teenagers who are addicted to video gaming also are addicted to marijuana. Both help you relax, you release tension in your body and in your mind, and you forget your problems for a split second. And the solution here is a majority of what this book is talking about, and most of the solution is kind of repeating itself a little bit, but a lot of like modern medicine books can kind of be that way. But it's just openness, there's non-judgmental, and letting them speak their perspective with no judgment, open-ended questions, and then coming to a solution with them, what they think they could replace the marijuana with in terms of a healthier coping mechanism. Because a strong argument on substance, and one that I agree with, is you can't just take the substance away and then expect people to completely like abstain from it. Like, you need a healthier thing to replace the usage with. Like for me, I think when I was addicted to video games for a long time, I used the video games to cope with a lot of stuff that was going on in my life, and also avoid responsibilities that I was developing while growing up. And as an adult, I've replaced video gaming a lot with like reading and exercise and doing just a lot more healthy behavior than just gaming all the time. But gaming for me was a way to avoid that. Like, I didn't have to think about the stuff that I wasn't doing, rather than just actually doing the stuff. But that is all the notes that I have. Maybe I'll just give kind of a quick monologue on some end thoughts. Hopefully that gives you some information that you can use in your life, or at least convince you to look into stuff if you're struggling with gaming, or maybe even pick up this book. Dr. K really has helped me out a lot in life. Because of him, I think I've actually become interested in Hinduism, or Buddhism more specifically. Zen Buddhism is more I'm mostly pulled to, and I feel a lot more happier, and I have a better routine now as an adult because of some of Dr. K's ideas and me seeking to understand more about the world. So I just want to express my gratitude to Dr. K. Very much appreciate you, man. So that being said, I'm gonna go do some yoga, and then maybe play some Skyrim later. I'm not sure yet. I read this coming from a perspective of actually being the child in the parent relationship, where the parent didn't understand, or parents didn't understand gaming. And for me, like, I used it to escape from life quite a bit. And if I could have gave my parents this book, like, man, I wonder how differently it would have been treated growing up. And I'm just very grateful that it came out when it did, rather than being 20 years later or something like that. So yeah, I encourage you to not just game all the time. If you are gaming all the time and watch YouTube all the time, don't do it all the time. Do it in regulation, and have some healthy stuff in there, like going outside, eat an apple, eat some produce, go play out in nature, go play with other people, outdoors, go hiking, do all sorts of stuff. I'm gonna go fishing a lot more this summer. Very stoked. I want to make some videos on it, maybe. That'd be really cool. But yeah, that is How to Raise a Healthy Gamer by Alok Kanagia. It's a good book. And that will be going on to the stack behind me. So thank you for taking the time to watch this, if you watched all the way to this point. I appreciate it very much. It's fun to film this, and hopefully it makes a little bit of sense at the very least. I love you. I hope you have a good day, and goodbye now.
Come on, let's go. See, people will say karma is a motherfucker, nah? But really, I am the motherfucker. That's what I told your mom last night. You like that karma, bitch? Come on, let's go. I can't do it.